In the middle of the 3rd century of the Common Era, the Roman Empire was ravaged by a terrible plague. Our chronology is not clear, but the plague arrived sometime proximate to Decius's short reign. The plague was spreading by 249 or 250. It reached Rome within a year. It lasted nearly 20 years, until 270, and it reportedly killed as many as 5,000 people per day in Rome at the peak of its lethality. The pathogen is impossible to identify. Proposals have included measles, smallpox, or a hemorrhagic fever similar to the Ebola virus. Initial reports suggested that the plague originated in Egypt from Ethiopia, in which case the pathogen perhaps entered Egypt via the Horn of Africa from the Red Sea. However, the claim of an Egyptian and Ethiopic provenance for a disease is something of a literary trope, and is perhaps an imitation of Thucydides, who narrated that the Athenian plague migrated to Athens from Egypt. Alternatively, the disease may have entered the Roman Empire via Gothic invasions on the Danube, rather than traveling up the Nile from the interior of Africa. In any case, the lethality of the disease was such that it decimated the military manpower and agricultural production of the empire for decades to come. The plague is labeled by historians as the Plague of Cyprian, because our most striking account of the plague comes from Cyprian, the Bishop of Carthage, who wrote about the plague firsthand in his De Mortalite. There he observes how even Christians, sharing the same flesh as other people, can fall prey to the disease of the eyes and the attack of fevers, and the feebleness of all the limbs is common to us with others. Then, in a fuller description, Cyprian writes, "This trial, that now the bowels, relaxed into a constant flux, discharge the bodily strength, that a fire originated in the marrow ferments into wounds of the fauces, that the intestines are shaken with a continual vomiting, that the eyes are on fire with the injected blood, that in some cases the feet or some parts of the limbs are taken off by the contagion of diseased putrefaction, that from the weakness arising by the maiming and loss of the body, either the gait is enfeebled, or the hearing is obstructed, or the sight darkened." In terms of severity, according Pontius, Cyprian's biographer, there broke out a dreadful plague, and excessive destruction of a hateful disease invaded every house in succession of the trembling populace, carrying off day by day with abrupt attack numberless people, everyone from his own house. All were shuddering, fleeing, shunning the contagion, impiously exposing their own friends, as if with the exclusion of the person who was sure to die of the plague, one could exclude death itself also. What made the Cyprianic plague so utterly devastating is that the Romans had a high bar for what constituted a dreadful pestilence. In a world without antiseptics or antibiotics, mortality rates were incredibly high, local epidemics were normal, and even prior pandemics were not unknown. Whether the Cyprianic plague was any worse than the Antonine plague of the 2nd century or the Justinian plague of the 6th century is impossible to say. But what is clear is that the plague was, in words of some recent scholars, a nameless, unstoppable, unfamiliar, and unfathomable dread. Even after the death of Decius in a battle against the Goths and the death of his son Hostilianus from the pandemic, the new leadership of the empire was powerless to prevent the plague from ravaging the populace further, so that the historian Zosimus could ask, was so great a mortality ever known in any former period?